Since the 7th anniversary, we've had 2 Ultra releases, Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta and Ultra Half Corrupted Zamasu. But prior to the 7th anniversary, we had only got 1 Ultra, that being Ultra Perfect Cell, where usually we would get 2 Ultras at least before the anniversary and 2 Ultras after the anniversary, leading towards us getting 1 Ultra in the anniversary and 1 Ultra in the festival. But we all know in this 7th anniversary, we got 2 Ultras, those being Ultra Final Form Frieza and Ultra Super Saiyan Goku. But if that's the case, and now that we've already got 2 extra ones, does that mean in the festival 2025, we're going to get only 1 Ultra? Well, the simple answer would be to say yes, but maybe it's not that simple. So let's break it down and see what we got here. Also, let me know in the comment section what you think. You're free to your own opinion, and I'm curious to see what you do think. Let's take a dive. Right, so I think the first thing we should do is look at why they might have released 2 Ultras in the 7th anniversary in the first place. I'm not a dev, so I can't give you a definitive answer, but I can make some educated guesses, some assumptions using logic that would make sense for why they might have made that decision for the 7th year of all years. So the first thing let's point out, this is supposed to be their greatest year ever. The greatest anniversary of all. You know, the Super 7th anniversary. So of course they tried to, you know, increase the bar by dropping 2 Ultras. People have mixed opinions about it, but they did do that, I'm not gonna lie. Those Ultras look phenomenal. Super Saiyan Goku and Final Form Frieza. You know, it's just nice. They look good together, and of course everybody was like, wow, the model on Goku, the mechanics Goku has. Not a big fan of Frieza's, I don't think anybody is, but you guys get the gist. They increased the bar, and that was the point because it's their 7th year, 7 Dragon Balls, Super 7th anniversary. You get the point. We can also just write it off as an exception. So to create a pair like that, it's not something they can just do all the time. There's very few pairs that would be high caliber to put in a celebration. If I was to just mention some, we obviously have Super Saiyan Goku and Frieza, the fated battle on Namek, 5 minutes until the planet blows up. That makes a lot of sense. But is there many others that you would have in a celebration to end the celebration? I don't think there is. We might have Cell and Gohan, but would you hold Cell to the same standard of Frieza? Most Dragon Ball fans don't. And I'm saying that while he's my favorite antagonist in the whole of Dragon Ball. Maybe Vegito and Buhan, but if they drop Vegito, we wouldn't even need Buu. We've had this in numerous cases as well, so it could just feel stale. Maybe MUI Goku and Jiren. I think that would be a top contender, to be honest, but it would be MUI Goku holding all the weight. Gogeta and Broly. We've had Gogeta before, so it's a similar thing to what I said with Vegito and Buu. I don't think there's anything else that would hold the same weight as Super Saiyan Goku and Frieza, so doing these 2 together made the most sense as an exception versus the rule that they could continue to do further down the line. I think we should also point out the production time and cost. It's very apparent that they only dropped 1 Ultra, and since they only dropped 1 Ultra prior to the anniversary, people immediately had the idea that we were going to get 2 Ultras in the part 3 of the anniversary. We did then get 2 Ultras in the anniversary, and what that can tell a lot of people is that it costs and it takes time. So they went out their way to not drop 2 Ultras prior to the 7th anniversary where they usually would, and they moved that slot, so they pushed it back so that they could drop 2 in the anniversary where usually they just drop 1, but we would have had 2 prior to the anniversary, which would still make 3, so it's still 3 in the first half of the year, just in a completely different order. So a reason they were able to drop 2 Ultras in the anniversary would be because they only dropped 1 Ultra prior, which means they had time to develop the 2nd Ultra and put it together in the anniversary. But beyond from that, I don't think there's any other reasons as for why they would have made this exception. Like, sure, it's cool, the 7th anniversary, so it's their big year, they're trying to hype it up, but is there many layers beyond that? I don't know. I don't think so either. It could very well be an exception, but right now, just validating why they would have done this for the 7th anniversary. Now, like I mentioned at the start of the video, we've already got 2 Ultras since the 7th anniversary ended, Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta and Half Corrupted Zamasu, and to me, that screams that we're only going to get 1 Ultra in the festival. If we only had got 1 Ultra since the 7th anniversary, I would then think we'd get 2, but if they drop 2 in the festival still, which is possible, it might feel very overwhelming because it's not like they further increased the Chrono Crystals or anything. I think it's only natural to assume that they would push back 1 of the Ultras so that we get 2 in the festival, similar to what they did prior to the 7th anniversary. We had only got Cell and there wasn't another Ultra, but that isn't a guarantee. I should also just add, is there anything special about the festival 2025 in comparison to the game's anniversary? Well, sure, it does seem like they treat the festival better. Not every year, but I think a lot of people will agree to that. But the anniversary is supposed to be the game's birthday, so technically it should hold more weight, and if we run by that logic, what makes makes the festival special, for it to have some weight in the same way they absolutely put weight on the 7th anniversary by the fact that they were just gassing it up since the start. And unless I'm wrong, you guys can let me know in the comment section. For me, there's nothing. It's really just an end of year celebration. So with that being the case, I think it's less likely they would try to do something more overwhelming in the same way they did with the anniversary by dropping 2 ultras. I think it's more likely we would only get 1 ultra. I think the real question a lot of you guys would have is, if it is 2 ultras or it's 1 ultra, what would it be? Now there's a lot of ultras we have in Dragon Ball Legends already, and I think that writes off a lot of possibilities that we could get for the 2025 festival. So first, let me just start with the options of if they drop 2 ultras. Now I think one thing that should be heavily considered before I mention these options is that they don't have to pair them up like they did in the 7th anniversary. I think thinking like that limits a lot of the thought process. If you assume they're going to do an arc based 2 ultra drop, then it limits the possibilities that exist, and that restricts how likely you are to be right if this was an actual prediction. But right now I'm just going to list some possibilities. So let's focus on the arc based ones. Just to throw out a couple: Gogeta and Broly, MUI Goku and Jiren, Gohan and Cell, Vegito and Buu, Vegito and Zamasu, Gohan and Bojack, Bardock and Chilled. As you can see, some of those options really stink, and some of those options just don't work because we already have that ultra. I didn't even mention Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Omega Shenron because we already have Omega Shenron, unless they were just going to drop a premium version of him, which I can't imagine people really want. Just not impossible though. But then we could extend it to double ultras that don't match each other, and that's where things really get complicated. Could you imagine they drop 2 ultra fusions at once, Gogeta and Vegito? It could be 2 Gogetas, it could be 2 Vegitos, it could be 2 Gokus, it could be 2 Gohans. And realistically speaking, if I had to pick one, I would think they would go MUI Goku and Jiren. But honestly, I don't think they're gonna go the 2 ultra route. So let's focus on the 1 ultra option. Based on some that we haven't got, Super Saiyan 4 Goku from GT, I think that's a very big contender. We could get a new Gogeta. From the Broly movie, he would just have to be Super Saiyan and not blue. Also very possible. MUI Goku, right there. Do I think we're going to get him? Unfortunately, no, but it's not impossible, at least for right now. Sword of Hope Trunks too. Not everybody's favorite pick, but he has been a Festival Legends Limited headliner before, and that's restricting to what we know. If they go the extra mile and start doing ultra tag units, the door really opens wide. But as you can see, there's a lot of options here, and I think it's a lot easier for them to produce 1 ultra, especially considering they've already dropped 2 ultras since the 7th anniversary, opposed to them dropping 2 ultras in the festival when they've already dropped 2 ultras right now. The natural assumption is to follow what they did leading towards the 7th anniversary if we was going to get a similar setup in the 2025 festival. Now, if I was to give my conclusion, I think it's more likely we get 1 ultra based on the patterns I've already recognized in this video. But there's another thing that I want to introduce that we haven't got in a long time, which I think is very possible considering this is their special 7th year. And I know we've done this every single year since they released them, but the game originals tag. I think they won't need to drop a 2nd ultra if they do something else special, and the other special thing would be a game originals Legends Limited. A unit we didn't think was fathomable would increase the bar inevitably. And I also think it's much easier to produce a game originals than it would be to produce an ultra, unless it's an ultra game originals. Something I also didn't address is just the cost against the profit. This hasn't been Dragon Ball Legends' most profitable year by any means. We saw in the 7th anniversary, they didn't hit top grossing once. That doesn't mean they can't, it just means they didn't. And there's lots of reasons for that. For example, they have the web store. If people are buying from the web store, they don't buy from the regular store. And that means the revenue they obtain isn't calculated through normal means, it's their web store. So it's less likely that they would hit top grossing. But you could also argue that because Dokkan Battle, who also have a web store, have been able to hit top grossing, even though they have a web store, it should mean that Dragon Ball Legends should be able to do the same too. And if I was a dev and I tried to do something extra spectacular in the anniversary and it didn't earn me more, would I continue to do that thing? Would I repeat that process in the festival, putting out more to receive less? We know the devs. If I was to make an assumption, I wouldn't think they would do that. But it's not impossible. But if you ask me for my opinion, I think we're only going to get 1 ultra. Putting all stocks into Super Saiyan 4 Goku from GT. That's going to be the end of the video. Like I said at the start, let me know what you think is going to happen in the festival 2025. Do you think they're going to drop 1 ultra or 2? And honestly, if they drop 2 ultras, that's going to mess up a lot of us, especially considering they've already dropped 2 ultras since the 7th anniversary ended. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you haven't already, make sure to press the subscribe button. We're on this grind to 200,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for watching, man. My name is Zakashi, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one, man.